Imagine a girl only 15 years old, poor, black, motherless, living on the edge of starvation with 3 younger siblings. Now imagine that same frail girl with a sad gaze entering a luxurious mansion dressed as a bride beside a wealthy 70-year-old man with white hair, a silver cane, and a past no one fully knew. What was that girl doing there? Why would such a powerful, elderly and reclusive man choose her to be his wife? And the most terrifying part, 10 days after the wedding, that girl uncovered the darkest secret of his life, a secret that would change everything. Welcome to the channel. Here, you'll discover emotional stories, stories that bring tears to your eyes and make you reflect deeply on life, choices, and destiny. If you enjoy this kind of content, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, and share this with someone you know who will be moved. And comment below, "I am committed to the truth and to always becoming a better person." Or tell us what city you're watching from. This is the story of Aline, a girl only 15 years old who lived in the countryside of Maranhão, Brazil. Since the age of 9, Aline had been taking care of her siblings alone. Her mother had died of cancer. Her father abandoned the family when she was still a baby. All that remained was a leaky wooden shack, an old stove, and the innocent love shared between 4 children left behind by the world. Aline was like a mother to her siblings. She sold cakes at the city bus terminal, washed clothes for neighbors, and cleaned rich people's homes just to gather enough money to buy rice and beans. On Saturdays, she carried buckets of water on her head for nearly 2 kilometers because her home had no plumbing. But despite all of this, Aline never complained. She smiled with the little she had. She was beautiful, sweet, with a pure heart, and that was what caught the attention of Dr. Rubens. Rubens was a mysterious man. He lived in a mansion on top of a hill, surrounded by high walls and cameras everywhere. Almost no one in the town really knew him. They said he was a retired businessman who owned factories in São Paulo and had investments abroad. A widower for over 20 years, with no known children, he was seen as a strange and lonely old man. Few dared to get close. But one day, Aline was hired by a neighbor who cleaned his house weekly. It was just a small favor, a quick cleaning. She barely stepped through the front door, and her life was never the same again. On her first day, Aline arrived shy, wearing the same clothes as always, her hair tied with an old scarf and worn-out flip-flops. While she cleaned the hallway floor, Dr. Rubens appeared on the staircase, silently observing. "What's your name, girl?" he asked. "Aline, sir," she answered politely. "How old are you?" "I'm 15, but I've been working since I was—" He fell silent for a moment, then said, "You remind me of someone, a very special person I lost many years ago." Aline didn't understand, but continued with her work. She returned several times, and each week Dr. Rubens seemed more interested in her. He asked about her life, her siblings, her dreams. One day he asked, "If you could ask for anything, what would it be?" She replied, "A safe place for my siblings to sleep, food on the table every day, and a better future for me." That was when everything began to change. Days later, a lawyer showed up at Aline's house with a proposal, a contract, an unusual, shocking, even absurd offer to many. Dr. Rubens wanted to marry Aline. He would leave everything to her and guarantee a dignified life for her siblings. But in exchange, she would have to sign a marriage contract that could not be annulled and could not tell anyone its terms. She would have to live with him for at least a period of time and accept everything, including the secret he would reveal 10 days after the ceremony. Aline cried. She didn't want that. She knew the weight that marriage carried. But she looked at her siblings sleeping on the floor, wrapped in torn blankets. She thought of the nights she cried in secret for not having milk to give the youngest. She thought of the promise she made to her mother before she died. "I'll take care of them, Mom. I promise." And so, Aline accepted. The wedding took place discreetly in the mansion's garden. No guests, No party, no flowers. Aline wore a borrowed white dress from a household employee. Dr. Rubens wore a grey suit and, though old, looked more elegant than ever. People in the town started whispering, "How absurd! That's a crime. How could she accept that? She's obviously after his money." But no one knew the pain she carried. No one knew the nights without electricity, the meals divided into four, the agony of growing up alone. And more than that, no one knew what Aline would discover 10 days after the wedding. Something so deep, so shocking, it would make the whole world see that union differently. But before that revelation came 10 days of silence. During those first 10 days, Dr. Rubens didn't lay a finger on her. He asked for nothing. He didn't look at her the way a man looks at a woman. He simply watched, spoke little, and sat for hours on the veranda, staring at the distant mountains, sighing like someone bearing the weight of a past never spoken aloud. Aline began to wonder, who is this man really? Why did he want to marry me? Why does he always seem sad, even with so much money? But on the 10th day she was called to his office, and what she heard in that room forever changed her perception of the world, of life, and of herself. The clock read 7:45 p.m. when the housekeeper knocked on Aline's bedroom door. "Mr. Rubens is waiting for you in the office. He said it's important." Aline's stomach turned. It had been exactly 10 days since the wedding, and she remembered very clearly what was written in the contract she signed. On the 10th day, a secret will be revealed. After that, the decision to stay or leave will be yours alone. Aline descended the stairs slowly. The house was silent, as if even the furniture knew something monumental was about to happen. The office was at the end of the hall, behind a dark, heavy wooden door that was always closed. But that day, it was slightly ajar. Aline took a deep breath and entered. Dr. Rubens was sitting behind the desk, wearing a grey wool sweater. His glasses rested on the tip of his nose, and in front of him was an old wooden box, locked with a padlock. Without looking up, he said, "Close the door, Aline, and sit down, please." She obeyed, her heart racing. Then he said, "Today, you'll find out who I really am and why I married you." Aline remained silent. "There are things in life we can't erase, only learn to carry. I've lived more than 70 years. I've made many mistakes, earned too much money, and I lost almost everything that really matters. When I finally realized the emptiness I was left with, it was too late. But then you appeared, so young, so much like someone I lost." He stood up, walked to a bookshelf, took down a framed photo and placed it on the desk. Aline came closer and looked. It was a picture of a very young woman, dark-skinned with a sweet smile and braided hair. She looked just like Aline, the same eyes, the same expression. "This was my daughter, Leticia." Aline's eyes widened. "You had a black daughter?" "Yes," he replied, "but I was a coward. I fell in love with a woman my family would never accept. Leticia was the result of that forbidden love, and I was a monster. I denied paternity. I watched from a distance while she was raised by a brave mother who did everything to give her a dignified life. But at 22, Leticia died of pneumonia. I never had the courage to say goodbye." Silence filled the room. Dr. Rubens wiped away a discreet tear. "I've spent the last 40 years trying to forgive myself, but I couldn't, until one day you walked into that house, with that same manner, that same look, and for the first time, I felt that God was giving me a second chance." Aline was stunned. "You're not my daughter, Aline. But I swear, your presence made me relive everything I lost. More than that, I discovered you are the granddaughter of the woman I loved. You are Leticia's daughter's daughter. I investigated your last name, your story, your birth certificate. Everything matches. You're the only living family I have left." Aline froze. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked with a trembling voice. "Because I knew you wouldn't accept the marriage. And even if the marriage is only formal, just a contract, I needed to ensure that you would have everything. that your brothers would never go hungry again, and that you would inherit what I could never give Letitia." He opened the wooden box and slid it to her. Inside was a stack of documents, wills, bank accounts. Everything was in Aline's name. The house, the businesses, the investments. "You are my heir, Aline. And more than that, you are my last chance to do something right in this life." Aline cried, her heart torn between rage, compassion, and relief. "So, this marriage was just a way to protect all this?" she asked. "Yes. But I swear, I never touched you, I never would. You're like a daughter to me, and if you want, we can annul this marriage today. But know this, everything I have is still yours, because you deserve it, and because I owe it to your grandmother and your mother." Aline looked at the old man with tearful eyes. For the first time she understood everything, his silence, the sadness in his eyes, the care he had shown her from day one. From that moment, the weight she had been carrying was transformed. She was no longer selling her dignity. She was, in fact, an important piece in a puzzle of pain and redemption. But the story doesn't end here. There were still more secrets, because Dr. Rubens's past wasn't only made of mistakes. It was filled with persecution, business secrets, and a truth hidden for over 40 years that no one could have imagined. And that truth would soon be revealed, putting Aline in danger. The days after Dr. Rubens's revelation were marked by a strange silence in the mansion. Aline tried to process everything she had heard. She wasn't just married to a rich, old man. She was the granddaughter of the woman he had loved. She was, in a way, the missing link between a past of guilt and a present of redemption. But not all silence brings peace, and Aline was about to find out that inheritance, that whole empire now under her name, wasn't just a gift, it was a curse in disguise. On the morning of the 13th day, she woke up to noises outside the house, people talking loudly, camera flashes, nervous voices. When she looked out the window, she saw reporters and news vans surrounding the gates, posters, extended microphones, shouted questions. Is it true the poor girl married only for money? Did you know he had a black daughter? Are you really pregnant, or is it just another stunt? Aline's heart raced. She ran to the living room and found Dr. Rubens tense, holding his phone. They leaked the story, everything, the marriage, the connection to Letitia, the will. And worse, they're twisting the facts. Aline collapsed onto the sofa, breathless. But how did this happen? Rubens pressed his lips and said in a low voice, "Someone wants you out of the way." Aline felt a chill run down her spine. She was caught in something far bigger than she imagined. Rubens' fortune didn't just come from businesses and real estate. He owned a conglomerate that included banks, construction firms, investment funds, and even land abroad. He had enemies, and the fact that everything was now in the name of a 15-year-old black girl from the slums unleashed a silent fury behind the scenes of power, and that's when the threats began. Anonymous letters started arriving, first insults, then veiled warnings. "You don't belong in this world. Go back to where you came from, before it's too late." Aline tried to ignore it, but one night, returning from the garden, she found her bedroom door ajar. Inside, her diary was ransacked, and on the mirror, written in red lipstick, were the words, "Not even the blood you carry will protect you." She screamed. Rubens showed up desperate. The police were called, but there were no signs of forced entry. No one knew how they had gotten in. That's when Rubens made a decision. "You're going to study abroad, where you'll be safe. From there, you'll be able to manage your assets in peace. I'll stay here and face whatever is necessary, but I won't allow them to hurt you." But Aline refused. She was tired of running, of spending her entire life being commanded, ignored, humiliated. Now that she finally had a voice, an identity, a purpose, she wouldn't accept being silenced. "I'm not leaving, Rubens. This is my story now, too. If they want war, they'll get one." The old man smiled proudly. but at the same time there was a deep look of concern in his eyes. "Then you need to know everything, absolutely everything." That night, Rubens led Aline to a hidden safe under the office floor. Inside were dozens of documents, videos, audio recordings, evidence, secrets, lies. He explained how, for decades, his fortune had been used by others to cover up tax crimes, political bribes, and even disappearances, things he knew about but had never had the courage to expose. "If I opened my mouth, I'd be killed. But now you're the face of the company, and they're afraid of you, Aline, because you represent something they can't control." She was trembling. "That's why they're trying to destroy you before you learn the truth." Then he handed her a flash drive. "This file has everything, everything that could destroy this empire or set it free. But be careful. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could cost you your life." That night, Aline sat alone on the couch, holding the flash drive in her hands. The glow of the laptop screen lit her face as she thought, "What am I going to do with this? And who am I really now?" The next day would be decisive. Rubens had scheduled a meeting with the company board. It would be Aline's first official appearance as heiress and manager. But what she didn't know was that a plan was already underway to stop her from getting there, and someone very close was involved. Yes, the pain wasn't over. The story was just beginning to descend into the darkest corners of the human soul. Would you keep going even if you knew your life could end in the name of truth? Comment below or tell us which city you're watching this story from. And of course, if you're still here, write in the comments, "I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person." And if you're enjoying this content, subscribe now to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. In the next few minutes, you'll see how Aline will face the biggest dilemma of her life. And the final secret kept by Rubens is something so powerful it could change everything forever. It was tomorrow. A timid sun peeked through the curtains of Aline's room. She put on a discreet suit, styled her hair just as Rubens had taught her, and went downstairs for breakfast. The mansion was silent, but not like usual. There was a strange, heavy atmosphere, as if something was about to happen. Rubens was sitting at the table, staring fixedly at an untouched cup of tea. When he saw Aline, he smiled sweetly, but his eyes revealed deep exhaustion. "Today is the day. Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes, more than ever," she replied. They both knew that the meeting with the company board could change everything. Rubens had decided to present Aline as his sole heiress and future president of the conglomerate. And although legally nothing could be done, the senior board members, old, white, arrogant men, would never accept being led by a poor, black 15-year-old girl. In the car on the way to the company headquarters, Rubens handed Aline a sealed envelope. "If anything happens to me, open this." She swallowed hard but didn't question it. They arrived at the main building, a luxurious structure in the city center. At the entrance, security cleared the way while journalists tried in vain to get statements. Rubens and Aline took the elevator to the top floor where the board was waiting. In the meeting room, all eyes turned to the girl. Fake smiles, whispers, and looks of disdain followed her as she sat beside Rubens. One of the members, Mr. Alides, was the first to speak. "With all due respect, Dr. Rubens, this decision is insane. A child in charge, a girl with no education, no experience, and on top of that—" He stopped before finishing, but everyone understood. "Black." Rubens stood up with difficulty, leaning on his cane. "With all due respect, Mr. Alides, you speak like a coward. This girl here has more courage than anyone in this room. She represents what you'll never have, the strength of someone who has overcome hunger, prejudice, and pain." Aline felt a shiver down her spine, but before she could thank him, the doors to the room burst open. A security guard ran in, shouting, "Dr. Rubens, we need to evacuate the building now." Everyone stood up, alarmed. "Bomb," he said. "We received a warning. An explosive was left in the building's garage. We must leave immediately. chaos ensued. In the midst of the panic, Rubens grabbed Aline's hand and pulled her into a safer room at the back of the building. But when they entered, something unexpected happened. A man was already waiting inside. Someone Aline knew very well. Marcos, Rubens' right-hand man, who had been with them at every meeting, always helpful and discreet. He was armed. "I think that's enough, isn't it, Rubens?" he said coldly. "You had your chance to fix things, but you couldn't just hand everything over to her. This isn't just about inheritance. It's about power." Rubens froze. "You were behind this all along." Marcos gave a crooked smile. "Since the beginning. Every reporter who showed up at your door. Every threat letter. I planted the bug in your office. I leaked Aline's story to the press, and I warned the shareholders about your madness." Aline took a step back. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "You? Nothing. You were never supposed to show up. But now that you're here, I have to make sure you disappear forever." Marcos pointed the gun at her. Rubens stepped in front. "If you touch her, I swear I'll destroy everything you built off my back. You don't have time for that, old man. You can barely breathe. And even if you have proof, the system is on my side. Now move." But in that moment, a gunshot rang out. Not from Marcos, from someone standing in the doorway. It was Marina, the mansion's housekeeper. Her hands trembled as she held a pistol. She had shot Marcos in the arm, causing him to drop the weapon. "Bastard!" she shouted. "I knew you were no good." Security arrived within seconds. Marcos was detained and handcuffed. Aline, in shock, fell to her knees. Rubens rushed to her, holding her face. "It's over, my love. It's over." But he was wrong. That wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Because what would come after the assassination attempt was the revelation of Rubens's final secret, a secret he had kept his entire life. And now, with his health failing, he knew he could no longer hide. Aline needed to know, even if it changed everything she believed to be true. Are you ready for what's coming next? Because what will be revealed in the next part will forever change the course of this story. If you're still here with a tight heart and teary eyes, write in the comments, "I am committed to the truth and to always being a better person." Or, say where you're watching this story from, because the most powerful revelation is still to come. The morning after the attack, Rubens's mansion was filled with silence. Not an ordinary silence, but the kind that screams. Aline woke up earlier than usual. She felt restless, with the sense that something huge was still about to happen. As she went downstairs, she found Marina preparing tea in the kitchen. "He's waiting for you in the library," she said without lifting her eyes. "He said it's time." Aline swallowed hard. She knew this wasn't just any conversation. Something in Marina's tone made it clear. The most important moment of her life had arrived. She walked down the long hallway and opened the heavy library door. Rubens was seated in his favorite armchair, a blanket over his knees and a small wooden box by his side. "You came?" he said with a tired smile. "Of course. You said you needed to tell me the truth." Rubens took a deep breath. "Aline, I love you like the daughter I never had. But it's time for you to know who I really am, and why I didn't choose you by accident." Aline sat silently, ready to listen. Rubens opened the wooden box. Inside were an old necklace with a small gold cross, a time-worn photograph, and a letter. He picked up the photo and showed it to Aline. It was a very young woman, dark-skinned and with a sweet smile, holding a baby in her arms. "Her name was Lucia," he said, his eyes glistening. "She was my first and only love. I met her when I was 25. She was a nanny at my parents' house, poor, black, and the most beautiful person I'd ever seen." Aline listened closely, barely breathing. "Back then our love was forbidden. My father, a strict businessman, threatened to disown me if I didn't end it. And when Lucia got pregnant, they sent her away in a rush, without telling me, without letting me say goodbye." Rubens closed his eyes, holding back tears. "I spent years looking for her, unsuccessfully. And when I finally found a clue, I learned she had died in childbirth. They said the baby didn't survive either. Aline brought her hand to her mouth. But what if that's not what happened? She asked. Rubens nodded. That's what I began to suspect after I saw your file from the orphanage. Your full name, your features, and this necklace. He handed her the gold cross. This necklace was Lucia's. I gave it to her myself. You had it when the social worker registered you in the system. It was as if fate was screaming, "Look, Rubens, she's alive." Aline trembled. "Do you think I'm Lucia's daughter?" she asked, her voice cracking. Rubens didn't answer with words. He simply handed her the letter from the box. It was an old letter, written in the desperate handwriting of a woman in distress. "If this letter ever reaches you, Rubens, know that our daughter is alive. They lied to me. They said she died, but I felt it. I'm a mother, and a mother knows. Promise me that if you find her, you'll protect her, love her as she deserves, and never leave her alone in this cruel world." Aline read with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. "This handwriting, it's my mother's. I recognize it. I remember this. It was the only paper I used to carry in my pocket as a child. I always dreamed of knowing who she was. Now it all makes sense." Rubens held out his hand. "Daughter, I've waited my whole life for this moment." She hugged him tightly. They cried together for minutes. The world seemed to stop. A lifetime of pain, emptiness, and abandonment finally gave way to something new, belonging. Later that day, sitting on the mansion's veranda, Rubens and Aline talked for hours. He told her stories from the past, showed her photos, spoke of all the things he wished he could have done by her side. But in the middle of the conversation, Rubens coughed hard, very hard. And for the first time, Aline saw blood in his mouth. She ran out desperately, calling for help. Marina came running. "He's getting worse," she said. "We need to take him to the hospital now." In the emergency room, the doctors did everything they could. Aline waited outside with the envelope Rubens had given her days earlier, still sealed. After hours of tension, the doctor came out of the room. "He's stable for now, but we need to talk. Rubens's condition is more serious than we imagined." Aline sat down slowly. "What does he have?" she asked. The doctor took a deep breath. "A very advanced cancer. He hid it from everyone for a long time. Now we have a few months, maybe weeks." The ground disappeared from beneath Aline's feet. She didn't want to believe it. Now that she had finally found her father, now that she finally felt loved, she would have to lose him. Marina tried to comfort her, but Aline was inconsolable. That night, back at the mansion, Aline sat on the bed and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a will. She was the sole heir, but there was something else, a final page handwritten in ink that was already somewhat faded. "Daughter, by the time you're reading this, I may no longer be here, but I want you to know something. You are the best part of me. The world isn't ready for someone like you, but that's exactly why it needs you. Use everything I leave you not to live as I lived, but to transform lives. To love, to forgive, and above all, to never forget where you came from and who you are. With eternal love, Rubens." Aline closed her eyes and cried like never before. But that wouldn't be the end. It was the beginning of a new journey, one she would face with pain, but also with courage. For there was one more secret hidden in the shadows of that mansion, something even Rubens didn't know, and it would change everything once again. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "This story is truly touching me," or tell us where you're watching from. Your presence here makes all the difference. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel. Like, comment, and share this story with someone you love. The most emotional revelations are yet to come. In the following days, Aline spent every minute by Rubens' side. The news of the cancer had changed everything, but it had also brought them closer than ever. With every conversation, every glance exchanged, something inside her was healing, as if the emptiness of all the past years was slowly being filled with love, truth, and redemption. But one night, while Reuben slept soundly in the hospital, Marina called Aline aside. "There's something you need to see now." She took her to an old basement in the mansion. Aline had never been there before. It was a dark place, smelling of old wood and dampness. Marina lit a dim lamp and pointed to a stack of old boxes. "Reuben's was always private, but I found this years ago and never had the courage to show it. Now I think you need to know." Aline opened one of the boxes. Inside were dozens of notebooks, cassette tapes and old photographs. Among them was a red envelope with her name handwritten on it. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a document. She began to read. "Dear Aline, if you're reading this, maybe you've reached the truth or part of it, but there's something no one else knows, something that could change everything you believe about me. I was never just a lonely, rich old man. For over 30 years, I was part of something that destroyed me from the inside. A group, a closed circle of powerful men, men who controlled dirty businesses, secret deals, and even human lives. To keep my fortune, I accepted silence. I accepted injustice, but I never stopped looking for you, never." Aline felt her stomach churn. She turned the document, and when she read the name of the group mentioned, her heart nearly stopped. Golden Veil Society. She had heard that name in hidden reports, in investigations that mysteriously disappeared from the air, in dark rumors about missing people. Reuben's was part of it. She began flipping through the notebooks, and there were detailed notes of secret meetings, names of well-known political figures, shady deals involving illegal adoptions, influence trafficking, and what seemed like control over charitable institutions. Aline's hands trembled. In the middle of everything, a sheet in block letters. "I tried to leave," but next to it, in red ink, another note. "They threatened me, said if I revealed anything they would take from her what was taken from me once." She swallowed hard. Her was herself. Reuben's had been blackmailed for trying to leave the organization, and they had used Aline's existence as a bargaining chip. This was much more than a story of love or reunion between father and daughter. It was a conspiracy. She ran to the hospital, the letter in hand. Reuben's was awake, and when he saw her enter like that, he furrowed his brow. "You found out, didn't you?" he said in a low voice. Aline just nodded, eyes filled with tears. "Why, Dad? Why did you get involved in this?" Reuben sighed deeply, a heavy gaze aged by decades of guilt. "Because I was ambitious, young, weak, and because, at that time, all I cared about was winning. And I did win, Aline, but I lost everything in the process. When I found out Lucia had died, I thought my life was over. That's when they recruited me, promised power, influence, money, and I accepted." He held her hand, "but I never forgave myself. That's why I looked for you. That's why I found you. That's why I married you, not just to protect you, but to ensure they couldn't get to you. As my wife, you'd have access to everything. You could inherit. You could protect yourself, and one day, you could do what I never had the courage to do, destroy this rotten circle from the inside." Aline fell to her knees beside the bed. "I don't know if I can." Reuben's touched her face. "You're stronger than I ever was. You survived a world that tried to devour you since childhood. And still, you love, you feel, you care." He took off a ring and placed it in her hand. "This ring is the key to a vault in the basement. Inside is everything, documents, evidence, accounts, videos, everything you need to bring them down." Aline looked at the ring as if it were made of lead, heavy, cold, but also liberating. That night, she returned to the mansion, opened the vault, and saw with her own eyes the extent of the rot that had sustained the fortune of the man she now loved as a father. Videos of meetings, audio implicating powerful names, and documents revealing the society's involvement with disappearances, manipulation of laws, and even human trafficking. But there was one video in particular that made Aline's blood run cold. It was of a meeting that had taken place just 2 years earlier, and in the corner of the image there was Marina. Yes, the faithful housekeeper, the woman who had been by Rubens's side all those years. Aline paused the video and zoomed in on the image. It was her, without a doubt. Back at the hospital, she entered the room in silence. Marina was there, holding Rubens's hand. "You were part of it too?" Aline asked. Marina turned slowly. "I was one of them, but I regretted it many years ago and decided to dedicate my life to protecting Rubens. I loved him, even knowing he'd never love me back." Aline looked at her, confused. "You loved him too?" "Yes, but he only ever loved one woman, your mother." Aline took a deep breath. "What do you want me to do with all this?" she asked. Marina replied, "Expose it without fear, but protect yourself. They will try to silence you, Aline. They don't forgive." That night, while Rubens slept, Aline made her decision. She would record a video telling everything, showing every piece of evidence, every name, and she would publish it everywhere. But what she didn't know was that a black car was already watching from outside the mansion, and that the Golden Veil. Society already knew Rubens had said too much. If you're feeling the impact of this story, write in the comments. I'm committed to the truth and to always being a better person. And of course, subscribe to the channel. The night was silent, but the silence carried invisible tension. Aline, alone in Rubens's office, stared at the digitized files now filling her computer. She knew that if she clicked publish, her life would never be the same, but she also knew there was no turning back. She had discovered the truth, she had faced the pain, and now was the time to fight. Before acting, she decided to go back to the hospital. She needed to see Rubens one more time. As she entered the room, she felt something strange. Rubens was sleeping, but his breathing was weaker. The heart monitor beeped at slow intervals. She approached, held his hand. "Dad, I'm going to do it. I'm going to end this." Rubens opened his eyes slowly and smiled with effort. "I knew you'd have the courage. You are the best part of me." Aline wept in silence, but Rubens continued. "Promise me you'll live. Don't let hatred consume you. Do justice, but don't lose your light." And then the machine stopped. Aline screamed. The doctors ran in behind her, but it was too late. Rubens was gone. Aline stood there, motionless, holding his hand until everyone left the room. She knew the greatest act of love he could have done for her. He had done. He gave her the truth. That dawn, she returned home, locked herself in the office, and began recording. She looked at the camera, her eyes wet. "My name is Aline. I'm 15 years old. I was raised in an orphanage, and a few days ago, I married a 70-year-old man. Yes, you heard that right. That man was my biological father. But this story goes far beyond that." And then she told everything, showed documents, evidence, exposed names, faces, connections between politicians, businessmen, even judges. At the end of the video, she concluded, "If anything happens to me after this video, no, it wasn't an accident, but I will not be silenced. And if you're watching this, share it. Share it until the world knows. Because no one will erase my story anymore." She clicked publish and went to sleep. The next day, the video already had over 20 million views. News outlets began covering the case. TV channels tried to contact Aline. Hashtags with her name flooded social media. But along with support came threats. 2 days later, on her way to buy bread, Aline noticed a black car parked at the corner, the same one she had seen weeks before. She called Marina, desperate. "They're following me." Marina answered firmly, "Go home now, I'll help you." But when Aline arrived, the house was open, everything overturned, and Marina missing. On the living room floor, a single handwritten note, "Be silent or suffer the consequences." Aline ran to the vault. It was empty. The organization had taken everything, but she didn't panic, because she knew something they didn't. She had made copies. Everything was saved in different cloud accounts, encrypted passwords, and sent to journalists, NGOs, and alternative channels. The secrets were no longer in her hands. They were scattered across the world. In the following days, Names began to fall. Powerful politicians were arrested, judges were suspended, businessmen had their fortunes frozen, the Golden Veil Society was crumbling, and Aline's name became a symbol of courage. Articles called her the girl who took down giants. Books were written, documentaries announced, but she declined every invitation. She decided to leave the country with support from an international NGO. She moved to another continent with a new identity and reinforced security. And a new mission, helping girls at risk. Years passed, and on a sunny afternoon, now 21, Aline returned to Brazil for the first time. She visited Rubens's grave, brought white flowers, and whispered, "I forgive you, and I did it, but I didn't do it for revenge. I did it for all those girls who haven't been heard yet, and for myself, for who I became." She stood up, and as she was leaving the cemetery, a girl about 10 years old approached shyly. "Are you the lady from the video?" she asked. Aline smiled. "Yes, I am." The girl hugged her tightly. "Thank you. You gave me courage." And in that moment, Aline understood she was no longer just a shadow. She was a seed, a flame, a new beginning, and as she walked toward the car, the sky seemed clearer, because despite all the pain, loss, and fear, she had won. And it all began with an improbable marriage and a truth hidden for 15 years. If you watched until now, comment, "I'm committed to the truth and to always being a better person." Or tell us from which city you're watching. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this video with someone special, and stay with us. In the final screen, watch 2 recommended videos that will make you cry, because here, every story is more than just a story. It's a call to live with truth, emotion, and hope, where tears meet the light.